Good to see you.
Good evening.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Ann.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, Ariella, Sarah tells me that the CBH website says 6:30 is the start time.
They said 6, I think.
6. We've been trying to get that changed. It's 6. We've tried to put out the correct time in as many places as possible.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you computer,
The
I
website
think
still
even though the
says
website
6:30.
says 6, I think a lot of people have heard us say again and again, 6:30, again and again, that it's 6. I'm not worried. People will know that to come at 6.
If anybody just happens to know somebody that they think is 6:30, give them a quick email or text. That might be helpful. Ariella, you ready to go?
I am.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so happy to see you. Welcome, CBH friends, and welcome, friends of friends. Welcome those that will join us a little bit later on. I am Gay Ann Guerin, for those of you who don't know me, music director at Congregation Bet Havarim. Lucky me. We are here tonight for a behind-the-scenes tour of the making of our newest of 7 albums, Red Thread. This album will comfort you, uplift you, give you room to reflect on serious matters of justice and how we treat one another, and there are some really good Jewish prayers too. We've got over 50 musicians, our chorus, our band, our string ensemble, all under the direction of the incomparable Will Robertson. I have the vantage point of artistic overview of a lot of the music we bring at CBH and the communities beyond our own. And this album covers a lot of ground with 19 songs. How in the world did we manage that? So tonight you're going to find out. It is my pleasure to introduce you to your activation maven, your smiling go-to Johnny-on-the-spot BandLab engineeress, the instigator, creator, and host for this night's event. Drumroll, please, Ariella Friedman.
Well, thank you, Gayan. That was an incredible welcome. I am really, really, really excited for everybody to be here. Since we started making this album a year ago, I started taking little video snippets even when we were in person. And then all this pandemic happened, and I think that the recording of this video got even more interesting. And I felt really strongly this was a story we needed to tell and needed to tell together. So I'm so happy that you have the whole chorus, you have the strings, you have band, you have all of us here together to tell this story about how we put this album together. So that's going to be our journey for tonight. You'll hear how we started, what happened when we ended up having to record online from our own closets. Many of us not super excited about going back in the closet that we tried pretty hard to get out of. And you'll also hear what happens when we record our individual pieces and send them to Will. How does he turn that into a song that anybody wants to listen to? And then what happens when we want to take all of that and turn that into a video? So you'll hear from Howard Weiner, one of our basses, of how he actually made the On the Day video. Tonight is interactive, so if you have a pair of headphones, Will's going to be playing a couple things for us throughout. So when Will starts talking about stuff, you might want to put your headphones on. And if you're new to Congregation Beit Haverim, we are very interactive on Zoom. So we show people some love with your hands. You can put some things in the chat. And if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat. We're going to have time for questions at the very end. And I will take those questions and then ask them to whomever you want to ask those questions to. So if you got questions, put those in the chat. And I think that's all I have to say. I am excited to pass this on to Brad Davidorf. Brad is going to lead us in Havdallah, which is a ceremony that marks the end of one week and Shabbat and brings us into the next week. And then we'll have some Hanukkah candle lighting. I don't have quite as enthusiastic of a drum roll for Brad, but what I do want to say is Brad is quite possibly one of the weirdest tenors. And if you know our tenors, I think that's saying something. So without further ado, the unique and unusual Brad Davidorf.
I accept that coronation is one of the most unusual tenors. I'd also like to introduce my son, Matthew Davidorf. Say hello.
Hello.
He's pretty weird too, so I guess it runs in the family. So we're gonna do Havdallah. So I'm realizing that the our camera, when we have the Havdallah candle here, kind of looks like we're gonna burn down the house. I think the plan is to not. And just in case, we have this rescue kos of yayin, glass of wine to put it out, which we'll use anyway. So we're going to start by doing Eliyahu Hanavi and Miriam Hanaviyah. So join with me, hum along, and here is how we begin Havdallah. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Agiladi. Bimhera b'yamenu Yavo Eloheinu Im Moshiach ben David Im Moshiach ben David Miriam Hanivia Oz v'zimra b'yada Miriam tirkod itanu Lehagdil zimrat olam Miriam tirkod itanu letaken et haolam bimhera v'yamenu hitevienu el mei ha-Yeshua el mei ha-Yeshua. And then we'll start our brachot for the for Havdallah. So we start with our prayer over wine, then we move into our prayer over the spices, and then over our candle, the fire, and then we will put it out after the last one. So we sing this melody and then say our blessings. So join in. Ya dai da 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 dai dai, ya dai da 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 dai dai, ya dai da 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 dai dai, ya dai da 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 dai, ya dai da 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 dai dai, ya dai da 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 dai dai, ya dai da 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 dai dai, ya dai da 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 dai. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Bore peri hagafen, bore peri hagafen. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Bore mine besamim, bore mine besamim. Yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Bore meore ha'esh, bore meore ha'esh. Yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech. B'yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yemei ha'maseh. Baruch ata Adonai, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da da. So that ends our Havdalah, and then we sing for a good week. We sing Shavua Tov, 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 Shavua Tov. All right, that's the end of our Havdallah service, and I'd like to hand it off to Colleen and Rich. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you. It was amazing.
All right.
So we're going to light the candles.
Go ahead. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim l'avotenu v'imotenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh.
We're going to introduce Will now. He is our amazing and wonderful chorus director and music producer to start us off on our journey in recording Red Thread.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. I'm Will Robertson. I'm the chorus director here, as Colleen just said, and the producer of Red Thread. And I work with our music director, Gayan Garin, who you met earlier, to craft and shape the music that has become such an important part of life here at CBH. So we thought we'd start out by telling you how chorus usually works in the before times. So just going to walk you through kind of what our rehearsals and recordings usually look like. So when we have a new piece to learn, our first task is for everyone in the choir to learn their parts. Sopranos learning the soprano part, altos learning the alto part. Now, people learn music in different ways, so we offer a couple of different options. We use sheet music for nearly every song that we sing, and that's our main reference as we learn the song. But I also record myself singing MP3s of each part. And I encourage folks to listen to those and put them on in the background while they're doing other stuff. What we found is that this is a great way to get a song in your bones, to really learn the notes, rhythms, the vibe of the song without having to actually do a lot of work on your own. Just the same way you'd pick up a song from listening to it on the radio. But that's not enough. We also have to practice singing it together. And so we spend several rehearsals learning and further solidifying the parts in our singers' heads. So you can kind of think of the sheet music as a textbook. Your homework is practicing and learning the notes on your own, and then your teacher is going to help make sure that you've got it and that you can sing it with your classmates. Now, we rehearse once a week on Mondays for only about 90 minutes, so we have to use our time well. At the beginning of learning a piece, we might spend 30 to 40 minutes on just one section of a piece, like the first verse. And by the end of learning a piece, several weeks later, we might just spend 10 or 15 minutes on the whole piece, just polishing little bits of it. Now, the way I teach, my chorus will tell you, is a long process, but it's an important one. There are so many different ways to sing a phrase, and in these rehearsals, the conductor makes sure that the sections are learning their phrases in a way that is going to fit into the vision of the whole piece. So we'll go phrase by phrase, little musical bit by little musical bit, and we're not just learning the notes. We're learning the words, the rhythms, how loud or soft to sing, and if that needs to change in the middle of a musical phrase, how short or long to make the notes, what vowels to use and how to shape them. Now, this is interesting. You don't sing vowels the way you speak. And the way that we shape our vowels affects our ability to blend together. So for example, if I was speaking E, I might make that sound as an E. If I'm singing it though, I need to make that vowel, what we say, is a little taller. E, E, E. You guys hear the difference there? So blend, if we use these taller vowels, we get a better blend. And blend is that magic part of choral singing, when instead of 8 or 20 individual voices, you hear one beautiful section or one beautiful, soprano section or choir. And a lot of that comes down to the vowels. And we're also teaching the intent to bring to each phrase. So whether something should be gentle or forceful or sung with hushed intensity. So I want to get this music into the singers' bodies as much as I can in these early rehearsals. And then, after everyone understands their part, several weeks later, then we get to the next part, actually making the music together. So now our rehearsals turn to, first of all, challenging folks to make sure that they know their part in their body. We might start doing sections of the piece from memory, or what we would like to do would be to scramble. So that means instead of all the altos sitting together, go stand by somebody who's not in your section and sing your part and see if you can hold it while you're hearing a tenor on this side and a bass on this side. It's an amazing challenge. It's a lot of fun. It helps you make sure you know your part and blend your part with your fellow chorus members. We're working later on balancing the different sections. So when we're making this music later on and learning a piece, I'm making sure the basses aren't too loud. I'm making sure the sopranos are always audible when they have the melody, and making sure that all the parts work together. And then finally, we're working on affirming the meaning and the intention of the piece. I often say that music isn't on the page. That's just a map. This is the music, what we're doing here. Once we've got the notes, rhythms, and words, we can actually start to make music together. And in these last rehearsals, honestly, people shouldn't be looking at the page anyway. They should be watching the conductor. I'm giving them visual cues to remind them how loud or soft we're supposed to be singing, when to start and stop. And they can also see the meaning and energy of the piece in my body or on my face. Remember that, because we're going to come back to the importance of seeing the conductor later. So that's our usual rehearsal process, and we do that leading up to all of our services, but things work a little differently when we're recording. The recording process is pretty intense. We usually record in that same 1.5 hour time block on Monday nights, but we'll only record 1 or 2 pieces a night. And in the couple of rehearsals leading up to a recording session, we'll spend the whole rehearsal on those few pieces, just making sure that we're polishing every detail. The bar for a good recording is different than the bar for a good live service. Intention and energy are really, really important in a live service or performance, and maybe more so than getting every note right. But for recording, we're going to be listening to that over and over again, right? Hopefully, our listeners will be hearing it over and over again. So it's important not just to capture a compelling performance, but we also want to get one that's technically accurate, in tune, in time, blending well. On the other hand, when we're recording and not in a service, we only really need to get each part right once. And unlike in a service, if we miss a part, we can just go back and do it again. And we do. When we record, we'll spend at least 45 minutes on a single piece, all 4 voice parts singing together. We'll usually focus in on one portion of the piece at a time, like that first verse. And so we record that part, and we record it again, and again, and again. And I'm making sure that I have enough takes of each section. A take means that we've recorded it, once, twice, 5 times. I'm making sure we have enough takes to be able to edit together a beautiful sounding track that has the right energy, blend, tuning, and timing, and doesn't have anyone coughing or shuffling pages or creaking the floor. That's hard to do when you've got 40 people in the room. The choir likes to joke, I think it's a joke, about the phrase that's probably going to be written on my gravestone, maybe after they kill me, which is, all together choir, 2 more times. So we'll sing through something and I'll get what I think is the perfect take and I'll say, absolutely awesome, fantastic, I can't imagine that part sounding better. Let's just do it 2 more times and then we'll move on. See a lot of nodding heads there. So that's a brief overview of our usual recording and rehearsal process. We'll talk more about this tonight, and as we will talk about more tonight, we recorded this album at many different places. When we were recording together, we considered whether to go to St. Bart's Episcopal Church, where we have our high holiday services, but in the end, we decided to record in our sanctuary at CBH. So now I'd like to pass it off to Josh to talk a little bit about what that experience was like.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, so first we have to do the setup, and I'm sure very few of you have actually seen the shed open, but yeah, I have because I've volunteered to carry those risers. Yeah, put a glove in my hand. Those edges can be a little bit rough. And yes, we had to follow the rules, no rustling pages. In fact, usually we would have the notes, but to avoid turning pages, we would just have the text written on 1 page, and I would just put in this little note, okay, I have to crescendo here, I have to diminuendo here, I have to do this note, and And that note, yeah, other rules. I remember when we used to fly in airplanes and the flight attendants would say to turn your phones off or put it in airplane mode. Well, yeah, same rules apply for recording. Don't want those phone rings or even those buzzes going on during the presentation. And yeah, Ariella would pass out cough drops to make sure that we didn't cough. It was cold and flu season. We weren't really thinking about anything else that could happen. And Will would give us headphones as well. Nobody asked if they were sanitized. And we would put one ear in there so that we could hear the background music, but we had to keep the other ear open so that we could hear ourselves sing as well as the people around us. Well, what does that look like? Let's go to the videotape. Wow, memories of when I actually used to wear button-down shirts. Anyway, to talk about the little snag that we hit in our recording process is one of our many talented altos, Jesse.
Hi, everyone. We went from togetherness, high energy, recording 2 more times for Will, and then the pandemic, and it all stopped. We met in February, and we didn't meet again. I mean, maybe we were lucky. A chorus in Washington in the Netherlands met March 7th and became super spreader events, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt like the boat tipped over and we were in the water. Chorus met on Zoom. Everyone was in tiny boxes. Singing together was completely out of the question. The distortion and lag time created a kind of sound soup. So we were all standing in front of a screen, muted and singing alone. It was shocking and it was disconnected and it was lonely and it was weird. We lost the sense of being together and community. The banter, the laughter, the joy of like listening to the other section so you could begin to hear how we all fit together. My internet went in and out. I wandered the house in search of a strong signals. The chat boxes really annoyed me. It was a huge loss. My way of grieving it all was to feel hopeless that chorus could work this way, angry at the technology, without the group, schmoozing, singing. I disconnected and I turned to what felt possible. It was March. It was time to plant the spring garden. I brought my art home from my studio. I showed up, but without enthusiasm. I considered leaving after 18 years, which is, in chorus is practically a life sentence. I thought I needed to give it up. Finishing the album was not just out of the question for me, it went out of my mind. I knew Will was trying very hard to find a way out of no way. It seemed impossible, but they did it. Let's turn this over to our Grammy-nominated choral director, Will Robinson.
Thanks, Jesse. So yeah, when COVID hit, it presented a number of challenges, to say the least. It was sort of like a reverse Dayenu for me. Can we meet? And if we can meet, can we rehearse? And if we can rehearse, can we figure out a way to record? And if we can record, Will the recordings be good enough to be able to use on an album? Gayanne and I talked a lot during this time, and we established immediately that our first order of business had to be figuring out a way to meet, just to see and support each other. On top of the wrenching time we were all about to go through, we had really lost what for many of us was one of our happiest and most healing activities, singing together. So we figured out the meeting pretty quickly, but we also learned that Zoom doesn't allow you to sing together because of latency, internet delay. So Gayanne and I were wrestling with how we were going to move forward musically and get something like that activity back. But even if we figured out a way to sing together, I still wasn't sure that the recordings that we would be making would work sonically for a CD. There's a big difference between my studio mics, which I just hit, and the phone and computer mics that we would likely be using. And also, the best way to record a choir is actually with the mics at a distance. If you get a mic too close, you're going to hear a lot of individual voices. From a distance, you hear the blended sound of the whole section. So if I'm asking our choir now to record each of their voices into a single mic inches from their face, is that going to work? And will it match up with the in-person recordings we'd already made? Beyond that, one of the most important parts of being in choir is that you support and are supported by the singer sitting beside you. How much was that lack going to affect the performances we were going to be able to get? And finally, a really important part of the choral singing experience is the relationship between the choir and the conductor. Conductors don't just wave our arms around to conduct. The expression on a conductor's face and even what they do with their eyebrows can serve to move and unify a group of singers. The technology we had didn't allow an easy way to make that happen. Were we still going to be able to create a beautiful, moving, and unified sound? Well, the short answer is yes. We made it work, and it worked beautifully. And there were some challenges on the way. So I'm going to turn it to Ariella to talk about the logistics of recording ourselves at home and how we decided to move forward and why.
Well, this was quite an interesting experience. There are a lot of different options for making music with people online, but not all of them are things that you want to do or want to hear. So we looked at a number of different options and found a program called BandLab. This might be making a couple people feel kind of anxious right now in the chorus. For some of us, this was a lot of fun. For some of us, this was pretty anxiety provoking. And what this program allowed us to do was for Will to record a track for us to sing to, and then we could record our own track. So you can see this is Tree of Life, and this is the alto group. We've got Sarah, Carrie, Jesse, me, Mackenzie, Linda. We've each recorded our own tracks at home.
Ariella, we aren't seeing it. Sorry.
You're not seeing it. Okay, thank you. Give me 1 second here. There we go. Okay. Can you see it now?
Go one slide back.
Okay, there we go. All right, sorry about that. So this is the setup of BandLab where each person puts their own track in there, and you can see each of us listed. And that's each of us singing. That's me singing right down here from my own closet. So we actually had several different bands. There was the soprano band, alto, tenor, and bass, and each had their part in there, and they could hear the sound of Will singing that part as well as the other parts, and then they'd record theirs. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the setup of what this looked like for people. So if you see this one, a number of us were recording from our closets. This is my closet here on the right and Avi's on the left. There's a lot of other stuff happening in there, and all those clothes actually help dampen the sound. So that was just part of the experience. This is Carrie's linen closet, and so she used the cough drop box to help hold her phone while she also had all the music pasted up so she could see it. Some of us had some very professional setups. So this is in Ellie's studio. So she has a professional mic and then some padding around it to help reduce the sound and the echo of the room. And then Sarah and David are going to share some of their pictures. I'd like to draw attention to the cats in these pictures. Half the pictures that Sarah sent me have a cat in them. So they set up their mics to record their family playing the strings. And here's another one. You see the cat down on the bottom. So I am going to pass it to Rebecca Leary-Saffon. She was formerly an alto and now is a soprano, but you are still an alto sister to me. And Rebecca's going to talk about her experience singing in her home, and you'll hear from a number of us what that experience was like.
Thank you so much, Ariella. So as this whole transition started to happen, right? So we found out that we're going to be recording ourselves. Okay, that sounds good. Individual tracks. That means that anyone could listen to just my track. Yikes. I had already moved my yoga classes onto Zoom without missing a beat, and people compliment my speaking voice, especially my meditation voice. But singing. I've been in chorus for many years, but I am not a soloist. I can carry a tune, my voice isn't unpleasant, but I really learned to sing with the chorus. At first, I was one of those people who would close my ear when we scrambled, especially when I wound up with somebody from like with a tenor, particularly next to me. But eventually, I learned to find my part by listening to the others. Most of us learn to sing by singing along to the radio or Spotify, Emma, and I happily sang along with my section. In chorus rehearsal, we always worked a lot on our blend, our mix. So when COVID hit and we started talking about recording individually, I was mortified. But as Ariella said, when we talked it through, everyone in chorus already knows what my voice sounds like. I'm the only one who doesn't. So I set up my recording space in my closet. I started figuring out BandLab and I recorded and I kept recording. The chorus and the synagogue has given me so much. I wanted to show up and do my part. And just like voting, every voice counts. Now you can hear me some mornings leading mindful moments and even chanting out loud. What an experience. Listening to Red Thread, I can't tell you how emotional it is to hear each song pulled together magically by Will, and I revel in the sum of our parts. Now let's hear from one of my newest and dearest friends, Amy Lighthill, about the joys of BandLab.
Amy, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Sorry. Thanks. I'm going to be honest. For many reasons, I found working in BandLab to be very frustrating. As you saw, Will used to make us these lovely MP3 recordings for us, just of our own part for every song that we could listen to as many times as we wanted, or we could hear one that he had made of the entire piece. And that is because Will is a music god. But on BandLab, I have to navigate through the screen. You saw what it looks like. It's basically like a hospital life support system. He still made a guide track, but the screen is looking like an EKG reading with all these different parts and everyone's individual tenor's part, but also the other parts are all kind of throbbing away on there. And I have to figure out somehow how to adjust them or cut off their sounds one by one and what to leave in and how loud. And also I have to remember to create my own track and not record over somebody else's, like Will's, for example. It's really stressful, y'all. Finally, I just got tough with myself and cut everyone off other than Will. But then it's just like me and Will. And that's pretty much like saying it's just me with Aretha Franklin. I mean, my voice sounds like Linda Blair when she's possessed in The Exorcist. So that was just something I had to decide not to think about anymore. One of the other things I really struggled with being alone with technology is that Will had told us, as you saw, that we had to record in the closet to get better acoustics. So since I spent the first 50 years of my life trying to get out of the closet, being told to get back in there was enough to give me a panic attack. And yet we persist, somehow we persist. And speaking of persisting, it is my honor to introduce the alto whose gorgeous, heart-rending solo reminds us that all the living must persist in love, the one and only Miss Shana Cohen.
Oh, thank you, Amy. So I had a slightly different trajectory with my home recording experience. Although I can certainly echo what other chorus members have said about BandLab. and about just how weird and lonely it feels to be singing alone in one's closet, surrounded by clothes and dusty luggage and love letters you sent someone in fifth grade. Like other chorus members, I pretty much live for the opportunity to sing with other people and just fill up a room with music. Being surrounded by an ocean of co-created sound is my definition of a spiritual experience and home. And so when it was just left up to me and I was left literally to my own devices, I had a lot of trouble starting my inner motor and just keeping it going. Well, at some point, Will and Gayanne must have taken pity on my wretched state. They conferred and suggested that I come into the studio and lay down some tracks for different songs, as well as to record the lead vocals on the song Pulse. For those of you who don't know, Pulse is a song composed by Melissa Etheridge in the wake of the Orlando nightclub shootings. It is an urgent call for people to recognize one another's humanity and an affirmation that love will triumph over bigotry and violence. Will and Gayanne's offer to sing this song in studio was a gift for which I will always remain grateful. Riding the waves of emotion through Melissa Etheridge's simple yet fierce lyrics can be intense for singers and listeners alike. Before COVID, I could just kind of lock eyes with a chorus mate or with an audience member while singing, and we would ride those waves together. Trying to record without that kind of support would have been unthinkable. In the studio, I was really privileged to have Will's real-time encouragement and guidance. Yes, it was like being alone with Aretha Franklin. He was a voice of warmth and positivity, reminding me that I didn't have to sound perfect on every take, that we were all in this crazy COVID world musical collaboration together, and that while parts of the song might be full of anger and heartbreak, there was also plenty of room for joy and hope. His reassurance gave me permission to explore the emotional range of this powerful song more fully. And plus, hearing the gorgeous voices of the chorus on those studio headphones was the closest I had come to feeling spiritually nourished in a while. The whole experience reinforced for me the meaning of Pulse, and I think of this whole CD. What connects us is stronger than what divides us. We're all in it together. And that's what I hope you'll hear when you listen to it. And now I would like to turn it over to our wonderful Gayanne so that she can share her experience of recording at home.
So this is going to sound like an excuse, and that's because it is. I was back at work for only 2 weeks recovering from a brain injury from that car accident I had when COVID shut down all religious services in person, sent us scrambling to learn about Zoom, all of these different technologies for singing that we had to assess and figure out if there was going to be any chance of them working, recording, broadcasting, how we were going to gather, not gather. And I just have to say that probably the next most common word that I was using after hello was probably latency. So my internet connection became my nemesis. Ariella took pity on me and brought me an Ethernet cable, which is not currently connected, but should be, and I know how to. I was just trying to keep my brain from shutting down with so much screen time and thinking all the time. I ended up recording background vocals on Beauty on my phone. So I was really grateful. But it was really kind of before we got BandLab up and running. And I was just trying to find a room in the house that had enough dampening. And when I was in my laundry room, my bird was way too loud. And it was crazy. So finally I got new internet. And once I got new internet, my internet would reach all the way to the closet. So I was able now to go to the closet to record. So I'm all excited. I've got, but we have to get microphones, right? And so all the microphones are sold out because we're not the only ones out there that are going to a Zoom world. And so we're out there hunting for microphones. So Will says, Well, the Blue Yeti's a good one. It's a little complicated, but it's a good one. So I order my Blue Yeti, and here comes, I just want to say, here comes Mr. Big Blue Yeti. Definitely, clearly, if you can see, designed by a male. I'm just saying. So now, so he's, you know, he's happy here, and I'm very happy to have Blue Yeti here. Okay, I've got my microphone. I'm all ready to go. I've got the closet. I've got internet. I'm ready. So it comes time to just do a really simple recording on BandLab, y'all. It's simple, right? One little track with a couple of other people for Amy Robertson's goodbye service. And I'm like, okay, I've got this. I've got this. This is good. And so I'm using BandLab. I know what I'm doing. I'm using BandLab. And so I'm like, okay. And so I play it back. And this is what I hear.
May you be blessed as you go forth from this place. Blessed are you. Blessed are you. Baruch atah b'vorecha, u'baruch atah b'tzidkecha, baruch atah b'vorecha, u'baruch.
Yeah, that's enough of that. That was, what is that? Poltergeist? Is some angels, are they playing a joke on me? I was like, it's in another key. How is that even possible? So that is not the last time that I was known to take headphones that I wasn't sure where to plug them in to my microphone or my computer or where, and throw them across the room. So I have to say that when Will offered to let me come into his foyer, which he had set up as a recording booth, I was not unhappy. I was going in anyway to record some solo tracks. And I am forever grateful that I got to maybe cheat and do some recording in the foyer, which is one of the reasons why I knew, Shayna, that would work. I don't know if this is helpful to you guys to know that this happened or not, but I spent a lot of years being really unhappy hearing my voice, and I couldn't really listen to a recording of myself. And as I became a vocal coach and worked a lot in the studio with Will, I learned that it's imperative really to be able to hear your recorded voice and learn how to discern what you're listening to and what you can do to make it better without judgment. So I was having a lot of compassion for everyone hearing their voice for the first time. And because a lot of people don't like to listen to their recorded voice. So I did a little bit of work with the chorus around what to listen for, what not to listen for, how to use recording, and how to be compassionate with yourself, and also just learn. And I think a lot of people have learned how to be in relationship with their own voice, which I think is really pretty awesome. All right, so you've heard a lot about the vocalist, but let's take it back to Red Thread headquarters, Will's studio, where he would also be recording instrumentalists. Take it away, Will.
Thanks, Gay. And that was beautiful. And I don't know if that says anything about my microphone here, but just wanted to bring that up there. So beyond recording the choir, of course, we needed to record our awesome instrumentalists and some vocals as well. Usually I like to get the whole band together in the studio to do this, but this year that wasn't going to happen. So I had to get creative, reconfigure, and find another way forward. So in normal times, I'm pretty well set up for this. So this is a photo of my studio. And you can see I've got the big room here, which is where I'm talking to you from. We've got one ISO booth here and another ISO booth here. Now I'm using this word. It's an isolation booth, right? This is, so these rooms are acoustically sealed. And they've got big windows. We can see each other. And there's another view of it. So I'll put musicians in each ISO booth. Might have a couple of musicians here in the big room, so we can all see each other, but the mics can't hear each other's instruments. but we can hear each other through headphones, right? We've seen pictures of studios before. So this is a good view of one of my ISO booths. And here's a picture of my daughter, Noah, in Studio A, Room A. And by the way, I'd like to mention that we're fostering Rufus. And so if anyone is interested, he is up for adoption. So each room has its own air supply from the air conditioning system. But in the early days of the pandemic, we weren't sure that that would be enough to stop the spread. So I didn't feel right about asking more than one person at a time to come in. And I barely felt right about asking one person to come in. So as Gay kind of alluded to, I came up with another solution. The studio has a foyer, a tiny 4x5 room, 4 foot by 5 foot room with stairs in it that we didn't put any ventilation into when we built. And the door between the studio and the foyer is acoustically isolated, which means that no air would pass through it. So one afternoon in late March, I moved a bunch of acoustic panels into the room, set up a microphone and headphone system in there, threw in a music stand, a lamp, some bleach wipes and hand sanitizer, and voila. If the rooms inside the studio were ISO booths, this was an ISO booth. And this is, of course, Noah in the ISO booth. You can see it's a little tighter in there. So a musician could come into this room from outside, put on their sterilized headphones, and record their part, all without ever having to share air with anyone. Now, one issue with this was that we wouldn't be able to see each other, right? There's no window. And that's important. It's nice to see who you're working with, and sometimes I need to give some kind of visual cue. So at first we tried using FaceTime, but there was latency with that too. I Googled a little bit and found the best way to get real-time video feedback would be with a wired camera and monitor. And after some digging, I found that the best and cheapest solution was aftermarket backup cameras for cars. So when you put your car in reverse, the little camera comes on and shows you what's behind you. So you could get a tiny camera, a 4-inch monitor, and 20 feet of cable in between them for $30. So I bought 2 of them and a couple of adapters for under $100 total. So this is what this looks like from Noah's point of view. So we've got the microphone, the music, and here's the little monitor showing me. And then from my point of view, here's my monitor, and here's Noah in the ISO booth. Now there's one additional bit of creativity. We were recording a lot of this over the summer, and it would get pretty hot in that room. So I did a little more research and found plans for a foam cooler air conditioning system. So as you can see, I've cut a hole in the lid of this Omaha Steaks cooler, and I would fill it with ice or ice packs, and then that black thing is a fan. I would just put the fan on top of it, blow air over the cold ice packs, and it would come out that duct right there. There were a couple sessions where that really made a big difference. So eventually most of the musicians I would work with would feel comfortable enough, and I'd feel comfortable with them coming into the studio with a mask, but I still have that ISO booth set up as a 100% safe recording solution. So now I'd like to turn it over to David Borthwick. David is an immensely talented musician himself. He's an amazing arranger. He's a violist. He sings bass in our choir, and his wife Sarah is our violinist and sings alto in our choir, and their kids are fantastic musicians as well. David's going to talk to us about how he built up his home recording capabilities to record his family's string quartet, which you'll hear all over this album. David, over to you.
Thanks, Will. So I'm just going to share my screen in a second. The strings were recorded in a sort of bewildering variety of ways. Ideally, a string section would be recorded together so we can see each other. We want to see each other's bows to know, to match articulation, to be able to figure out, that we're blending properly. And so we did actually a bit of that for this album. Our first sessions were in Will's studio that he just showed. That was back in August of 2019. We figured, if there was going to be a global pandemic, we should probably get some stuff recorded. So we did a session where we were doing it the way we would normally do it, which is to be all together. You can see there's sort of some sonic isolation between us, but we can see each other, which is kind of the crucial thing. We've each got our own mic. And the main thing we recorded that way was Anthem, but also parts for Be Here Now and Sigh No More. So that was sort of how we would like to do it. And here's another shot. Actually, so Ben Reese was also there. You can see his bow here, and there I am on the other side. And Sarah's actually taking the picture from her mic. So once the pandemic hit, of course, we're all stuck in our houses. We still had a string quartet at home, our family. And so we were doing some recording kind of on our own just for fun. And we realized that, we could get a fairly decent response from our little mic. So eventually it became possible to try to record some things for the album that way. But we still wanted to have, especially for the Bernstein piece that we recorded, we wanted to have the visual cue of being able to see the other string players. And so the way we recorded that one was to record our string quartet first, our family, and then to overdub parts, we do something like this that Sarah's demonstrating, where she's looking at a screen that shows the quartet, and she's got her music, and the mic is set up there, and then I'm recording her part alongside the quartet part. And so that's how we did, for example, the extra parts that you'll hear on the Bernstein. And Will plays bass on that. So he did the same thing in his studio. You can see a similar setup for him and also for the stuff we did for High Holidays. So he has a video where he's showing the quartet so he can get the visual cues from the quartet. He's got his Pro Tools set up where he's recording. He's got the mic for the bass. He's got the music. It's a rather complicated setup to put that all together. So some of the stuff we recorded that way. This was some of the last recording that got done instrumentally was Sarah actually went over to Will's last month in November and recorded in one of those booths that Will showed you. So she did a lot of the solo violin work that you'll hear on Kolhan Shama and other things. She actually recorded more or less in the usual fashion, except for the mask, right? She went over to Will's studio, and except for being in the isolation booth and wearing a mask the whole time, it was pretty much the way we'd like to do it. So as this, our plan sort of evolved as the, we figured out how to do things. We realized that we could do a pretty decent job of recording here, just in our den right over there. And so originally Will didn't think that he could record extra parts for This Be Dear to Me, but we figured out that we could record well enough to do that here. And so we actually recorded, there are 4 parts on that in his arrangement, and each member of our family recorded 2 different parts twice. So we had a total of 16 parts. And so then I recorded all those, and then I shipped them off to Will. And then it was his job to put that all together and make it sound like something in the end. So I'm going to turn it back over to him, and he can describe how he went about that.
Thanks, David. Where did my mouse go? There it is. It's good to see those again. All right. So everything that we've been talking about so far has been production, recording. But there's a really substantial and important part of the recording process called post-production, and that's divided into 3 phases: editing, mixing, and mastering. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about each of these phases, and then we'll listen to a couple of examples that I think should illustrate what this process is. We'll also end up taking a look inside the session files themselves. Now, for the entire duration of this recording project, I'm working in a program called Pro Tools. If you've ever used GarageBand, this is the fancy professional version of that. And you saw BandLab earlier, same idea. So I'm going to share my Pro Tools screen with you, and we can look and listen together. So here we go. Everybody see that? Wow, a lot to look at, right? So let's take a brief tour here, just a quick orientation. The main part that I want us to focus on is this big rectangle right here, all this stuff. So you can see that this window is divided into sort of horizontal strips. Each of these is called a track, right? I think if you've worked with GarageBand or BandLab, you know about this. Maybe it's your first time hearing about it, but each of these is a track. And you can think of a track as being one channel of sound. For our purposes right now, I think it's probably easiest to say that a track represents one microphone. So for example, my lead vocal on this song, I'm singing into a microphone, and that winds up on this track. Right? Now we've got, in each track, we've got the label, we've got some controls here, comments, this kind of thing. But of course, the most interesting thing on the track is all these multicolored boxes. So these boxes represent different bits of audio. And actually, we're literally looking at a model of the sound that I'm making when I sing. Sort of looks like an EKG, right, Amy? And we can actually listen to these. So let's listen to a little bit of my, and I'm scrolling back here just to get to a spot. Let's listen to a little bit of my lead vocal here, and I'm wondering if I've got sound going to you. We'll find out soon. Here we go. Listen. So this is just my lead vocal track.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Right? So that's just the lead vocal. Now we could also just listen to the guitar track. So let's listen to a little bit of that. So every instrument, everything that we've recorded is on one or more of these tracks, right? So there are a number of things that you can do with tracks, but one of the most important controls is the fader over here. This works like a dimmer switch, and it lets you make any given track louder or softer. So often so actually let's listen to that. So let's go back to this lead vocal and take a listen. I'll make the vocal really loud and then move it down and make it really soft.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Everybody hear that? Right on. So that's a big control for each of these tracks. So often one track is one mic, is one instrument performance. I sing my lead vocal into one mic and it winds up on a track, but not always. When the choir recorded in person at CBH in the sanctuary, that was one performance. We all sang together, 30 of us. But I actually used 6 mics to record us. So that was 30 singers, one performance, recorded in many takes, onto 6 mics. So that gave us how many tracks to record the choir with? Anyone? I actually can't see the chat. But if you said 6, you're correct. 6 mics, 6 tracks. All right. So now that you've had your Pro Tools orientation, everybody sees what a track is, what a fader is. Let's talk a little bit about editing. So editing is the process of listening to all the takes that we've recorded, evaluating them, and choosing which parts of which takes to use for each section of the song, and then actually putting those sections in place. So remember that when we recorded in person, I talked about getting many takes of each piece and each section of each piece. Well, the editing process is where I make use of those and put them together into a single smooth take. Editing happens in the studio after the recording session, and here's how it goes. Let's say I'm working on the lead vocal track. That's just the lead vocals, right? Not any other instrument. So I have recorded many takes of this myself, and when I'm editing, I'm going to listen to all the takes of the first line of the song. Take 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'll make a choice as to which sounds the best. Let's say it's take 4. And then I'll do the same with the second line. Listen to take 1, take 3, take 4, and then choose. Let's say it's take 2. As I'm choosing, I paste the takes that I've chosen into a single take called the composite take, or comp for short. And this process can be called comping. So I'll take 4, pop it in there, take 2, pop it in there. Once I get all the way through the song and create my comp take, I will go back and listen through to the comp take and make any adjustments I need to make. And if I need to, I can actually sub in parts of lines or even single syllables. And by the end of this process, I should have one smoothly flowing comp take that sounds just as if it's a single performance. Believe it or not, this is pretty much how all modern music is recorded. And that's pretty much been true since the 1970s. We can just do it a lot more quickly now with computers. So let's watch this in action. Let's comp a little bit of my lead vocal together. So I'm going to zip over here to the third verse. We're going to keep this soloed for right now. And so this is the beginning of the third verse. If you know this song, the third verse is sort of a down, like we've been blasting full speed ahead and now we kind of get quiet. So I've already got the first line of this verse comped, and we're going to do the second line. But let's hear what we've got so far.
There's something alive inside this room.
Okay, cool. So now we're going to do the next line. We're going to comp this line together, which is setting the strings of our souls in tune. So let's take a look at the takes that we have to choose from. Here they are. So I've got 3 takes here. Take 1, take 2, and take 3. So what I'm going to do, what I'd like to do is get the chat window up here. And I'm going to play each take for you twice. And I want you to just take a second, listen to it, and type what you hear into the chat. Like, is it soft? Is it loud? Do you think it's going to work? Is it going to be a good choice? Does it match how you think that line should go? Or is there some problem with it? Okay? So we'll listen to each take twice, and I'd love for you to type in the chat what you're hearing. Okay? So let's listen to that first line one more time, and then we'll listen to take 1. Here we go.
There's something alive inside this room.
Okay, so here's take 1 of the second line. Okay? Take 1.
It's setting the souls of our strings in tune.
Let's listen again.
It's setting the souls of our strings in tune.
Okay, good. Keep those coming. Here's take 2. We'll listen to it twice. Type what you hear in here.
It's setting the strings of our souls in tune. You can.
Let's hear that again.
It's setting the strings of our souls in tune.
It's good. All right. Let's check out take 3 here.
It's setting the strings of our souls in tune.
We'll listen to that one more time.
It's setting the strings of our souls in tune.
So, good comments. I'm reading everybody's remarks here. Which take do you think we should put in? As much as I love 3, and I do love 3, yeah, I think let's go with 2. A few of you caught this. If you don't have this song in your ear, you may not know, but in take 1, I switched the words, setting the souls of our strings in tune. So that wouldn't be a great fit. And I think we all agree that while the energy of 3 is pretty amazing, it may not fit this precise part of the song. So let's go ahead and go with number 2. So we'll select it. I'll click this button. That pops it into the comp take. We've comped a line. Mazel tov, everybody. Yeah, maybe we should switch it. I don't just do this with the lead vocal parts. I do it with the lead vocal parts for sure. But I do this with every instrumental part, with the chorus vocals, with everything. We get several takes. I make some choices, and then I put together a comp take. Now, we had about 50 tracks. And let's zoom out here, and you can see what I've done here with all of these different instruments, right? So you can also see that the that the lead vocal track has the most colors. I am not too proud to admit that I did over 30 takes of this lead vocal over 3 nights. So choir, it could always be worse. You think 10 was bad? But we needed to get it right. So I wanted to be sure that we got it. And in the end, actually the line that we just comped was made up of 3 different takes. One for the first little bit, and then one for the middle, one for the end. So that's editing. Once all the tracks are recorded and edited and in place, then we move to one of my favorite sections of the whole process, which is mixing. Now, mixing is the process of making all the tracks work well together. Now, remember when I talked about the last phases of rehearsing a piece where we're balancing individual sections, making sure the basses aren't too loud or the sopranos are audible? That's a little bit of what mixing is. That's a lot of what mixing is, actually. I'm listening to every sound that we recorded, the choir, the bass, the drums, and the guitar. I'm making sure that they're the right volume level relative to each other throughout the song. I am also shaping their tone to make some things stand out, to make other things recede to the background. I might be adding some reverberation or reverb to make it sound like we're all in the same beautiful room together. And I can even pick what side of the stage we're on. So I can put the mandolin on the left and the violin on the right. That's what the mixing process is, putting the players on the stage in a way that sounds like what we want to hear and presents the song. So I want to show this to you a little bit, and I'm going to show you a different window that Pro Tools gives us, which is the mix window. Where is it? Sorry, I'm going to go to share again. Okay, this is the mix window. So it's a little less colorful. Sorry about that. And this is a different set of information about the same tracks. It's just that they're vertical now instead of horizontal, and they've got all sorts of controls. Like, we're not looking at the audio anymore. We're looking at the track and the fader. You can see the track names down here, and type in the chat if you can remember what these things are called. Anyone? Anyone remember what these are called? If you said faders, you got it right, even if you didn't type it. So in sessions as complicated as the ones that CBH usually has, where we have dozens of tracks, I actually do a little bit of pre-mixing. What pre-mixing is it lets me balance several mics together and group them onto a single fader. So for example, if I have 10 sopranos who have recorded themselves at home, that's 10 tracks. And so the first thing I do is spend some time balancing out those 10 tracks and getting a great blend. And then Pro Tools lets me group all of those onto one fader called soprano, or soprano home in this case. And after I do the same procedure with the altos and the tenors and the basses, then I can group all those onto a single fader called choir, or all choir. And then I can do this with all the other instruments too: drums, bass, guitar. So in pre-mixing, I try to wind up with 5 to 10 faders that represent different instruments or vocals, and then I can actually start doing the creative work of mixing. So the actual mix process for me starts from silence, and then I bring in one instrument or group at a time. I'll shape its tone, change its volume, affect other things about it, and then bring in the next instrument, all while making sure that each additional track works well with all the ones that came before it. So let's watch this in action. Let's listen to this in action. We're going to go listen to a section of this song, and we're from the second chorus through the end of the violin solo, and we may start it over a couple times, just if we run out of time. And I'm going to start from silence. I'm going to add in a new instrument every once in a while. And when you hear the new instrument, you'll see me clicking, so use your ears. When you hear the new instrument, give me some jazz hands, okay? And then I'll tell you what I added in here. So let's try this. Let me get to the right spot. Second chorus to there. Great. All right, here we go. Drums, right? And remember, give me jazz hands when you hear a new thing. There we go. It's bass, hard to hear, but you can hear it. Guitar, just in time. Violin. Anyone hear the piano? Let's start this over. So you're listening, you're hearing these differences. Fantastic. One more quick exercise I wanted to do on this, which is I wanted to focus in specifically on the choir. And I want to give you a little bit of background on this first. So as you've heard, the biggest and most interesting challenge on this album was the fact that I had two choir sounds to deal with, right? We had the tracks that we had recorded in the CBH Sanctuary together before March, and then the home recording choir. So throughout the summer, I had realized that we could really achieve a gorgeous sound with our home recording. It really worked really well. But it did feel a little bit different from the tracks that we had recorded live in the Sanctuary. So to help bridge this gap, I actually asked people to record themselves at home, singing their parts to the songs that we had recorded in person. For example, in this song, Kol Han Shema, we actually recorded it in the sanctuary in December of 2019. But then I asked our singers in October, a couple months ago, to record their same parts at home so that I could join these two sounds together. And joining these sounds really helped me create a more consistent choir sound throughout the album. And I also found that it helped increase the dimension and depth of the choir recordings that we already had. So we're going to do a quick listening exercise here. I'm going to play either the sanctuary recording or the home recording. And I want you to listen, just one. I want you to listen and type into the chat which one you think you're hearing. And again, this will either be the sanctuary or the home recording. So you can type sanctuary or home. And then after we do that, I'll play the other one, and we can hear what that sounds like, and then we'll listen to both choirs together. Okay? So actually, I'm going to stop. Well, I'll go to the other screen here. All right, so here we go. Just the choir. All right, so you're listening and you're telling me whether it's the sanctuary choir or the home choir. Yeah, good listening, you guys. That's exactly right. So let's listen to it was the home choir. So let's listen to the sanctuary choir. Right. So now, yeah, there's good comments. It's more blendy, more full, bigger. Now let's listen to these two together. Exactly right. So you get the energy and the fullness and the bigness of the big room, but you get the focus of the small singers. So it was a really useful thing to have both of those. And I'll say too, when we had pieces that only had the small choir, I would mix them a little bit differently, right? With these, I really just needed the precision. So with other pieces where we had just the home recording choir, I was able to have the flexibility to mix them to sound bigger. So we've just talked about the first part of mixing, really. After I've got all the tracks in place, I spend the rest of the day adjusting balances and tone. And I have Pro Tools, I tell Pro Tools when things are supposed to come forward and when things are supposed to come back. And Pro Tools can change the volume for me automatically. And that's a big part of mixing, is figuring out those balances. Once we're done with mixing, then we go to mastering. And that's the last part of the process, and it makes sure that all the songs sound great together. So that's just a quick view into the mixing process and the production process. But we're gonna take a look maybe at one other additional interesting moment on the album. But before that, I want to turn it over to Ellie to speak a little bit about what it was like to hear our sound come together for the first time in quite a while.
Hello there, everyone. So now do you feel a little bit like Dorothy when Toto pulls the curtain away and you see the guy pulling all the levers and, oh my goodness, right? So picture each member of the choir sitting in their own house before a dingy gray box or a small dingy gray phone. Some of us are wearing earbuds, some of us are wearing headphones. We've just done our little choir warm up on Monday night, and which Will leads with a guitar, and we all sing along on mute, which feels weird, but it works. And Will has this particular cat that ate the canary look on his face. And he says, I want to share something with you. I'm going to cry now, so I'm going to burst into tears. So you just watch me cry. And he pushes one of those magic buttons. And we hear ourselves. We hear that beautiful sound, that sound that we were sort of longing for and crossing our fingers for, the Apollo 13 moment, as Amy Lighthill so aptly pointed out. We hear it. We hear what we wanted to hear. We hear the magic. The door has opened. We've stepped out into Oz and we're together again in this really amazing, magical way. And suddenly, I think for me, but I think probably for every single person in the choir, we realized it was possible. And most of us didn't know what Will was doing behind that curtain. I think now that we do, we have a much more deep and intense appreciation for all the work that goes into this. And as Toby just said, I got the chance to do this from Colorado. I actually got to rejoin the choir from afar. But the miracle of being able to do all this challenging, hard, weird learning stuff, and then finally hearing that it actually works and it feels good and it sounds good. And that touchstone, that moment of hearing ourselves together, and then he played it again and said, sing. And we sang on mute in our houses along to ourselves. And it felt like a choir again. And there's just no feeling like that feeling that, you know, you've tried your best and it worked. So with that appreciation, I'm going to turn it back to the wizard. Will, I know, has some more things to share with us, but it felt great.
Thanks, Ellie. That was a pretty magical moment. All right, so now we're going to check out one more song on the album. This is my arrangement of Leonard Cohen's Anthem, which is a very complicated arrangement, but I wanted to focus in on one particular part that I think is pretty unique and talk about what's going on. So let's listen together to the third chorus. And as we're listening, I want you to type into the chat what sounds you're hearing. It's good. Beehive feels right? We hear Gayanne, right? Everybody heard Gayanne. I don't think anyone actually mentioned her, but she's definitely there. We heard strings, and we heard some kind of buzzing or mumbling in the background. Let's mute Gayanne and the strings, as lovely as they are, and listen to that again, just what that mumbling is. Very interesting. So for this part of the piece, the directions that I give are that everybody in the choir chant their own personal prayer or a lyric from the song or something that's meaningful to them on the same note, A. So that's what you're hearing, the sound of 30 people all chanting different words on the same note. And the effect that you get is this kind of distant murmur in the background. So I actually wanted to highlight a couple of singers here so that you can hear what they're chanting. And the first one is Carrie Hausman, one of our altos. And she's chanting words that she had heard at our daily mindful moments meditation the day before that had felt particularly meaningful to her. Here's Carrie.
I place kindness at the center of my day. I recognize that I seek to be an agent of goodness and loving kindness. Help me remember that there's a foundation of kindness that is threaded through this world, even when what I see is cruel or uncaring. I place kindness at the center of my day. May it be so.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Carrie. I'm going to play you one other example. This is Valerie Root-Wolpe, and she's one of our sopranos. And I'll actually turn it over to Val and let her introduce her prayer, and then we'll listen to what she chanted.
Thank you, Will. I'm seeing Will in a panel, a very technical looking panel, and I wish I could see all of your faces. So I've been asked to comment on why I put the prayers in that I put in. I have to say there are two places in my home where I now do standing prayers. For many years now, I have done the practice of hipo de Dut, of going outside into the woods behind my home and standing there and praying out loud to God to deepen my relationship with God. I stand and pray and I speak out loud and I listen for answers. It's where I get to pour my heart out. And since COVID CBH recording times began, I now stand before a Blue Yeti microphone in a quiet, windowless basement room, and I pray that I do not go sharp or flat or run out of air or sing the wrong words or any of that. And most of all, I want my singing to fulfill the intention of the song. Many times this song anthem breaks me open and brings me to tears, and I cannot sing on. These are the times I go out into the woods and just pour it all out. In Anthem, the upper voices are asked to sing and pray with a bitterness and a cynicism and an anger about our betrayal. When we get to the line about I can't run no more with that lawless crowd while the killers in high places sing their prayers out loud, I'm so full of angst and feeling fearful and desperate. The song carries on, all voices and strings now joining in, and we're rising in pitch, we're bringing in dissonance, intensity, accelerating, pushing all our prayers up to open up a portal to the divine and to summon up a thundercloud finally. And the sopranos have to keep the heavens open by sustaining this long note. If you ever sing at full volume at a high pitch, I think I must have split a gut a couple times. We summon up a thundercloud and we keep the heavens open and we hear God's response from the lower voices, and they're going to hear from me. So this was so parallel to my own experience of going into the woods and praying that I told 6 blessings or prayers from the Amidah, which is the standing prayer, central prayer, 2 blessings of praise to widen the crack, keep the portal open. We name the holy. So at the beginning of the recording, you'll hear me say, Kedushat Hashem, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh, Ha'el HaKadosh, bringing in all the air to ground me, bring me back to here. And the next prayer you'll hear is the blessing to open to divine strength and kindness, to restore what is deadened. Baruch atah Adonai mechayecha hamitim. Then the next 2 blessings are in the middle part of the Amidah, where you basically get to offer up your own prayer. And I'm using the structure of the Amidah because I feel that Cohen really, this is his personal hipodadut. This is his personal prayer, his personal sending up of what's on his heart and pouring it out before God. This is what can happen in the middle 13 prayers, 6 of them for your own personal requests of what you want, 6 of them for communal prayer. So in my personal prayer, I ask to return and reorient to God. Forget about this perfect offering. It doesn't matter. Just pour it out. And for the communal prayer, the Gula, we ask for God's powerful redemption, to see the crack in everything, to ask for a thundercloud. Then finally, in the closing, the modim, the gratitude, the hodah, the thanks, hatov shimcha ulachan echodot, na'el hodot, open to gratitude. We give thanks. We ring the bells, it still can ring. And finally, the prayer of shalom, where we open to fulfillment and peace. And in Anthem, we are granted the blessing of light through all our cracks. It is a beautiful, beautiful offering. Baruch atah Adonai hamivarech adamu Yisrael b'shalom, b'shalom, with peace.
Baruch Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh, Atov Shimcha Ulachan Nehel Hodot, Mechaye HaMeitim, Rofei Amel Yisrael, Onein Hadad Harotzel B'tshuva, Yisrael Mavarach et Amo Yisrael B'shalom, B'shalom.
Thank you, Val. So most of the time in a choir, we want everybody to blend together so that you can't tell one voice from another. In this case, we actually wanted the individuality of each person's personal thoughts to be part of the sound, although we are still blending together because we're all on the same note. So now that you've heard 2 individual prayers, let's listen to the whole thing again. And this is the whole choir all chanting together, and we'll go ahead and put Gayan and the strings back in there as well. There you have it. So we've learned quite a bit about audio today. Now let's talk about video. I'm going to turn it over to our master video producer and editor, Howard Weiner, who is responsible for putting together many of the beautiful videos that we've made over this year, including On the Day We Are Together Again. Over to
Thanks,
you.
Will. Many of you know my previous life worked with Mr. Safon and other people in television marketing, and I'd edited before, and Gayan many times said, will you do a video for us? And I'm too busy, or, you spend your life in video and you don't want to do video when you come home. And I'm not in video anymore. So this summer, Gayan and Will approached me and said, we would like you to do 2 videos, one for On the Day, this one, and one for This Be Dear to Me. And we think This Be Dear to Me will be really easy, and On the Day We're Together Again will be really hard. And I looked at them and said, I think it's the other way around. And so I signed on, and one of the key things was, and you can't bug Will. Will is going to be busy. And so I set about trying to figure out how we would do this. I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me for 1 second. So the question was, I don't know if you can see my screen, how do we get 40-some people, with different technology at home, different knowledge, to record videos the same way and then edit them together in sync? And so we started with that idea that we had lots of people with lots of different skills. And so we wrote documentation. I started this, I think I wrote like 15 pages. I never expected that when I took a picture of myself in front of my kitchen, that I would wind up on a Zoom with 60-some people tonight. Show them, that you need to have space above your head, that you need space on each of your shoulders, that you need to put your laptop maybe on a puzzle box like I did, so that we're looking right at you instead of looking up at your chin or looking down at your forehead. And we told them about lighting, make sure that the light is in front of you, not over you. And then we devised a plan, and we said that every person would need 2 devices. You'd play the music back that we'd have you sing to. Even though we wouldn't hear you, we'd want you to be singing and be in sync with the actual song that we were going to edit to. We'd want you to play that music really loud, and we would want you to record the video with a different device. And that whole part about pumping up the volume was because we needed everyone to sing at the exact same time. Lots of people talk about, I'm going to do the clap and then I'm going to sing, but we couldn't have claps at different places. We needed one uniform clap. And so we created what's called a sync tone. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that's these 3 lines and a big line on the far left-hand side. And I'm going to play it for you.
On the day.
Good. Oops. And so we told people you're gonna press record on your recording device. You're gonna press play on that playback device. You are gonna sit down. You'll have time to sit down, take a breath, fix your hair, and then you're gonna sing. And we also said you need to sing the entire time. You may not be a soloist. You may not be singing at some point. Bassists sing at different times than tenors do at different parts of any piece, sopranos, altos, etc. We need this to be like it's a performance where you are on risers, so that we see you either looking happy or looking poignant. And then we said, send it or upload it. And we created a place for people to send the videos. And then they arrived. And Will showed you one screen. This is sort of a similar idea. These are tracks, and as you can see, there are 30-some tracks. Each person is on their own track, and you can see where they're dark, they aren't on the screen, and where they are light, they are on the screen. So people are cut up, they come on, they come off. We do this with Premiere. And by the same token, it's all synced up. This is some of the audio, not all of it. This is early in the process. And if you look, you can see that the waveforms, you've just seen them similarly in Pro Tools, they're all pretty much lined up. And in truth, they're perfectly lined up so that while we aren't hearing any person from their recording, they all sync perfectly with the audio and their own lips. This is just a view. I turned the monitor in my office vertically. This isn't everybody, but I needed to fit all 36 people. Keep in mind that's 72 tracks, plus Will's actual audio track that we were really hearing. So I'd like to say this was, where math meets video. This was as much of a math project that David Borthwick probably would have loved. It's, remembering our friends, Mr. and Mrs. X and Y axes from high school, because video is, it's a rectangle. It's in this case, we asked people to shoot 720p, which is 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels high. And in theory, we've given everyone instructions that it's all going to come back the same. And you can see on the left, I made a grid for myself. If somebody was sending me, if I was going to show like the soloist in the beginning, the screen, each shot would be at 50% scale, and the far upper left would be at the X and Y of 320 and 180. And in the 3x3, the far lower right would be 1066 by 6 at 600. And this way I didn't have to calculate it. I could just literally type it in each time. But guess what? We told everyone to check their settings, and they probably did, but we didn't anticipate that the Android videos would come in at 1920 by 1080. This is an example. That's Colleen and below her is Alan. And you can see that's a pretty significant difference, 1920 by 1080. And so it meant, it meant either one of two things, either equal scale equals small faces, as you can see with Alan next to Colleen. Small faces and lots of walls equals ugly, equals manual cropping, equals me saying, is it too late to back out? And then eventually just adjusting everyone manually. There are about 10 people probably this needed to happen to. And if you think back to that little, to that picture of all of the grid, every time someone was 1920 in that grid, they had to be adjusted. And speaking of matchy, wall colors and lighting will never match 100%. We told everyone, you could put a sheet up, you could sing in front of a white wall. And you can see, I'm sure that the wall in Bill and Rhina's house, I don't think it's yellow. It might be cream, it might be white, but people don't remember that, sometimes the light in your house is incandescent, but somebody else might have moved to LEDs, and somebody might have warm lighting or fluorescent. And so it came time to match. And through the beauty of color correction, I was able to do it. There's a process, just many third-party plugins in Adobe. This one's called Lumetri. And I picked up, I would sort of go through and say, I like the way this one works. And eventually I was able to apply them all so that everyone looked pretty uniform. And you wound up with this. And that's it in a nutshell. Thanks. And I'm going to pass it on to my baritone partner in crime and my video partner in crime, Bill Witherspoon.
Wow. So I didn't realize it was going to be used. Our walls are yellow in this room, and that's the lightest color we've got anywhere in the house, and the only blank wall. So I'm going to show you how to get to the blank wall in my room in just a second. So I did have a tripod, and in my case, I wanted to play with the laptop, play the music on the laptop, and use the iPad to record. But iPads, I didn't have anything really to attach. So like Will and his foam cooler, I'll show you in a second what I did for my tripod. I'll turn it around in a minute. This is a coffee can. But the other point I can make here is this is my cheat sheet of the lyrics, and it's taped to the back of the iPad. And I tape it right here because the camera is right there, and you want to look at the audience, so you look into that spot. So if I lose track of a line, I can do that. So then I'm going to stand up, and so we got two cameras running here because I want to show you what this. Oh, I was going to show you the coffee can. This is the the Cafe du Monde version of how to mount your iPad on a tripod. Okay, and then I'm going to switch over. You'll see me on this screen over here. And okay, so I'm supposed to have this uniform wall behind me. And let's see. I think I was going to do this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm supposed to have the uniform wall behind me. I'm supposed to be about this big on the screen. And there is my blank wall. Let's turn this up a little bit more. There we go. Blank wall behind me. Oh, it's not blank. This, can you believe that we've still got 20-year-old kid artwork on our walls here? This is no 20 years ago. And so I take this off, and oops, I've still got that. So as long as my head is between the camera and that picture hanger hook, then I'm fine. So that's set up. And then over on the laptop, which is what my other camera's in the laptop. But let's see. So I'm going to start the music playing, and I'm going to sing to it. I didn't start all the way to the sync tone. I'm going to start where the basses come in this case. Okay, so I got hook behind me. I will help the strangers I meet. So that's how that works for me. Okay, and I'll pass it along to Carrie Hausman, who does put kindness at the middle of her day and who's been doing wonderful things for CBH Music for so many years. There's so many behind-the-scenes things that in all our albums, and she's the alto, and she's going to talk about what happened in her home when she tried to do video.
Thank you, Bill. So I'm someone who is equally deliberate, thoughtful, and some might say overly caring about how I look and how I sound. When doing the audio recording, I generally go section by section, listening to my vocals against my section 8s and the guide track until I feel it's good enough. This requires many do-overs. With the video recording, though, we could not stop and start. If we screwed up or didn't like how we looked, we needed to do the whole thing over again. This is a very long 6-minute song. I did it many times through. I'd say at least 5 full times, plus a lot of additional times in which I cut it off after a minute or two when I knew I screwed up. And the definition of screwing up is interesting here because our voices weren't actually going to be used from this recording. It was only about looking like we were singing it and how we looked while doing that. But without having the visual clues from a conductor, it was sometimes hard to know the exact timing of where to come in. And even though I knew the song very well, sometimes I would get a minor word wrong, especially like remember your stories instead of remember the stories. And visibly realize that just after doing it, so I'd have to start all over again. But the hardest part was having to stare directly at the image of myself in the camera on my phone for 6 minutes, especially the beginning part before the full choir comes in. It's a really long time to stare at yourself while trying to look neutral and pleasant. I noticed every facial twitch and weird, asymmetrical, unflattering thing about my hair and my face and how my mouth moves when I sing, or at least how it was looking that day in 2 dimensions. There is no Zoom touch up my appearance feature on my phone. Based on this experience, it's hard to believe that I don't go through most of the day feeling continually self-conscious about how I look. Fortunately, with the lovely sepia tone Howard applied to the video, it made us all look better. With that, now that you have some insight into how this was made and what the experience was like for some of us, let's watch it.
On the day we are together again, on the day we are together again, I will pull you in close like a hoop with no end. On the day we are together again. We will share the same table again. We will share the same table again. I will pass you the salt, the candlelight will bend when we eat at the same table again.
We will walk round the block hand in hand. We will walk round the block hand in hand. We will stop for a snack at the taco truck stand. We will walk round the block hand in hand.
Someday we will go back to work. Someday we will go back to work. May we be among people who respect our worth. Someday we will go back to work.
I will help the strangers I meet. I will help the strangers I meet. It is possible to get back on our feet. I will help the strangers I meet.
I will write you a letter.
I will write you a letter for now. Hope is a message that survives somehow. I will write you a letter for
To the healers who keep us alive. To the healers who keep us alive. Oh, I toast to your courage, to your knowledge and light. To the healers who keep us alive.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It's really incredible to take that whole journey just in a couple hours, all from beginning to the end. That's pretty powerful. So what I'm going to do actually is wrap us up now, but we'll stay on informally if folks have some questions. If you enjoyed tonight's event, we actually have an open chorus rehearsal on Monday night. So you'll get to experience some awkward warm-ups with us, and you'll get to hear what that sounds like. That'll be a lot of fun. And we'll be singing a couple songs together, learning something new, and then we're going to be putting together a MadLib song together in the rehearsal, and Will is going to sing it for us at the end. We've been playing some fun chorus games over the last few months. That's been one of them. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for everyone's participation. There were so many people that contributed. And I just want to say thank you, especially for Will, for putting in the time to come up with bite-sized ways to teach all of these things to us tonight. And just want to share some love to my chorus family. I love you guys. So we'll stick around if folks want to ask some questions. Carrie's got the information. If you're interested in purchasing the album, it's so great. I just want to thank you all again. So feel free to hop off if you want to. And then if you have questions, you can put those in the chat and we will answer those.
Before you hop off, I just want to give a shout out to Ariella Friedman for putting this whole thing together. If you liked what you heard, she has been working tirelessly for the last week to put all these parts together, coordinate everybody, orchestrate these handoffs, help people hone their presentations. It's just been awesome. So thank you, Ariella. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Will. This is a lot of fun. I felt like this was a really important story that we could figure out how to tell together. All right, so thanks everybody. If you want to hop off, you can. And if you want to stick around, if you have some questions, feel free to put those in the chat and we will farm them out as we see fit. Thanks, guys. Any questions anybody wants to put in the chat?
Guess we answered everything.
Ruben wants to know, typically, what do you want to know?
I was just curious, a question for Will. How long for one of the songs on Red Thread did it take you to mix and edit and mix a song?
Yeah.
How many hours did you put in?
It's a great question, Ruben. The variety was enormous. I think probably the quickest one was our Havdallah, which was recorded the afternoon that Joe Biden was declared president-elect. We recorded and edited that. That was probably an hour, and I think it was probably about an hour to mix. Anthem, unsurprisingly, probably took the longest. On some projects I do a good job of keeping track of my hours, and on this one I didn't. But I would guess I would guess probably something like 60 hours, probably recording different parts, editing them, teaching myself the piano part.
Wow.
I
was curious. We were wondering who played piano on that.
Yeah, that was me. In several takes.
Good job, y'all. Really well done. Love you.
Thank you. So we had a couple people who had asked some questions during, and some of them might have gotten answered. So if you don't feel like your question got answered, please feel free to ask that question. Jackie, I know you had a couple questions, but you got some answers in there too. So if you have more questions, put them out there. Vicente asked if you could join the chorus from Colorado. Will, I'll let you take that.
Say that one more time, sorry.
Vicente asked if you could join the chorus from Colorado.
We've already got one Coloradan, I think, right? If I have the vowel right. So shoot me an email.
Rebecca Grapevine asked, what are the relative benefits and downsides of the sound engineer also being the music director?
Well asked. Because there are both.
And I might add, and a lead vocalist.
Is she asking the chorus members, or is she asking Will?
Rebecca, you want to clarify?
I'm asking Will.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say that one of the hardest parts would be if I was doing this totally alone. But I'm not. I'm working with Gayanne, and I'm working with all the musicians in the chorus and the strings and the band as well. And so it is a big collaboration. Having said that, there are like certainly the production Gan and I are really working together a lot on that. The engineering is on my side. And so being a part of that team feels great. And I would say it's much harder being the producer and the lead vocalist for a few of these songs. It's one of the hardest things you have to do as if you're a producer and lead singer, is to take one hat off and put the other on. You can't ever leave those. You can't ever fully divorce yourself from being like, I just don't sound good, you know? So, but you have to move through it. So.
Let's see, Bill and Rina asked, do you know of other examples of combining those roles, or maybe some other roles that get combined?
Producer and engineer get combined a lot. So there are a lot of folks who are the producer who's responsible for the musical oversight of the album, and the engineer who's responsible for technical oversight, choosing mics, doing the mix, that kind of thing. To have that person be a musical director, usually the production and musical director roles can be sort of interchanged. The audio engineer part is usually what you hire out, and that's usually what I wish I had hired out at some of these recording sessions. And the choir knows, because you've seen it, I usually bring in a few 20-year-olds to help out with this stuff. So they're running a few folks, let's say. So they're, helping me move mics around. Sometimes I have them actually running Pro Tools while I'm listening and directing. So.
Great. Other questions from folks? Could be for anybody. I think Howard actually just hopped off, so maybe not for Howard. Carrie said, Will, you talked about blending the voices of each section together. How much editing of any individual non-soloist voice did you do prior to blending it in with the rest of the choir?
Right. So as I've said in chorus rehearsal, I used every chunk of audio that was sent to me. And I have tools to help move everything together, blend everything together. There were occasionally times when I would every now and then hear someone drop a word, or they would hold a note a little bit too long. So that kind of thing I would definitely edit. It wouldn't even show up if we were all singing together in the same room, but just because of the way that we were recording to our phones, those kinds of things tended to get magnified. So that's the kind of editing I would do. But I really used every chunk of audio that I got sent.
Let's take one more question. Who has a burning question you would like answered? I think Bill might have a question for you. Bill, you want to just unmute and ask it?
It's a joke, really, I guess. When's the next album coming out, Will?
I have no comment to that question. I actually think you should ask David.
I think that's a good last question to end on. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was so much fun. It was great to be with everybody. And go download our album, send it to your friends, and join us for chorus rehearsal on Monday night. Nobody will hear you sing. It's the safest way to be in chorus. All right, thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.